Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Inside Track, brought to you by William Hill. I am hugely excited to be presenting this brand new show each and every week, where I will be joined by some fantastic guests from across the racing industry. We're going to be covering all manners of racing topics. We're going to be looking back at the weekend that was, reviewing the key action. We're also going to have a look at the antepost markets, exactly what the racing at the weekend has done, looking forward to the Cheltenham Festival. And we will have a specific anti-post race to be focusing in on. But if that wasn't enough, we're also going to be cramming in at looking at the weekend that's going to be and looking ahead to some key races then with some early plays as well. But obviously lots to look at in this half an hour show, so I'd better shut up, really introduce the guests that we have this week. And starting off, a man that needs absolutely no introduction whatsoever, but I'm going to be doing it anyway. William Hill ambassador, as well as racing legend and royalty, Sir AP McCoy. AP, looking very smart. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Kate. That was a bit of a build-up. I'm not sure I warrant that, but thank you.
Given the current location that you're in, I'd say you do warrant it. It looks like you're in your own palace right now anyway, so.
Sadly, I'd like to say that it is my own palace, but it's
still waiting. It's very great to have you on board anyway, and still waiting on his knighthood, but it shouldn't be along too soon, really, given his services to racing. James Mackie from Czech Media will also be with us each and every week as well. So James, how are you?
Yeah, all good, thank you, all good. Looking forward to getting stuck in. Obviously some cracking action at the weekend and some to come over the next few weeks, and hopefully we can find some winners along the way for the weekend and for the Cheltenham Festival. Yeah, so really happy to get going.
Definitely, fingers crossed that we will be able to find at least one winner for the festival. Anyway, Constitution Hill probably being the one, but anyway, I'll claim that for now. Now, before we move on to the racing proper, AP, it would be remiss of me not to ask you about the Cheltenham Festival, what it means to you. Of course, a whole plethora of winners in your career, but just from your perspective, what does the festival mean to you?
Well, I think it means the same to me, Kate, as it does to everyone else. You know, it's, we talk about it pretty much from the day that it finishes to the start of the following year. Everyone, when you go racing at any time of the year in jumps racing, everyone asks the question, might your horse be one for Cheltenham? They don't ask about it for anyone else. So, and as a jockey, there is no bigger stage. You want, as a sports person, you want to be performing on the biggest stage, and there is nowhere like winning at Cheltenham. It's just like, the amphitheater, the walk. It's all, it's just what it's all about. And I know we in jump racing, or a lot of people in jump racing think, it shouldn't just be about 4 days in March. But unfortunately, the more we talk about it, the more it seems to be about 4 days in March. And that's where everyone wants to win. You go to all these big sales now, throughout the year, and everyone wants to buy a horse to win at the Cheltenham Festival. That's what it means. But as a jockey, there is no greater stage. I was lucky enough to win, a lot of the big races, jump racing around. And a lot of them I'm very proud of, but I think winning the Cheltenham Gold Cup is the pinnacle. It is what you all want to do. And if you're lucky enough to have a horse, whether it be owner, trainer, jockey, or whatever, association with the Cheltenham Gold Cup winner, it is the pinnacle.
Yeah, the ultimate, isn't it? And like I say, for that day for you, I guess I must be bang up there in your career anyway. Could I synchronise? Who could possibly forget that day then, on what a legend of a little horse he was. Right. It is time to kick on with the discussion proper on this week's show. And we're beginning with a look back at the weekend that was. And we'll be starting back by looking at Sandown's action, where we had a brilliant winner of the Grade 1 Tingle Creek in Edwardstone. But of course, that wasn't the whole story of the race. So AP, back to you, please, for this one, for your assessment of the Tingle Creek.
Yeah, I think we should talk about Edwardstone first and foremostly, because he was a very good winner of the Tingle Creek. He did nothing but impress. He jumped pretty good on the whole. He put up a pretty impressive performance. He was a little disappointing on his last run when we saw him at the end of last season at the Aintree, but came back as good, if not better than ever, winning the Tingle Creek. And if you're Alan King or Tom Cannon, you'd been very impressed with what you saw. We can easily pick holes, and was great as Granitina. How good a benchmark is he? Did Shishkin not really perform? He looked like a horse that was struggling from a very early stage. He made a few mistakes. Is the Shishkin that we saw that beat Energumene in Ascot last year? Is that the best we're going to see him? We'll have to see if Nicky Henderson can get him back to that kind of a level. But I think you have to give the credit to Edwardstone. He went out and done his job, and couldn't have been more impressive doing it. He's going to have much tougher opposition to take on. It may not be in Kempton at Christmas in the Desert Orchid. It may not happen until he takes on in Ergamine and Fernie Hollow and whatever else Willie Mullins has to offer in Cheltenham. But it's a long way away, and I think they can enjoy their Tingle Creek success, and they have every right to be dreaming of the Champion Chase in March.
Yeah, exactly. That's it, isn't it? And James, I think that AP makes a very fair point there, where for all that we've had all the discussion behind Edwardstone, then in the Tingle Creek, of course, as AP said, sort of Grenadine, what's his benchmark? How disappointing was Shishkin, relatively so? But are we not giving enough credit to Edwardstone? He feels like a horse where we haven't fully given him credit throughout his entire career. Would that be fair to say?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's the thing. When the race was built up, and I was really looking forward to the Tingle Creek this week. It was probably the biggest race of the season so far that I was really looking forward to, just because we've seen horses avoid each other already this season, but everyone sort of took each other on, didn't they? So that's what it was good to see. And if you would have said to me an Arkle winner be 11-2 to go off for that race, you'd have said that's stupid, wouldn't you? Because you've got to respect an Arkle winner, and he doesn't get the respect he deserves, does he, at all? But what a brilliant performance that was. Like you say, Grenadine, well, he'd be ready for his life, wouldn't he? Nichols will get him absolutely ready for his life. So you can say what bar does that set compared to probably some of the Irish horses like your Energamines, but it can only be what's in front of you, and Edwardstone was absolutely brilliant. It would have been nice to see Shishkin back, wouldn't it? It would have been nice to see back. But for me, it's almost like Energamine, when in that race at Ascot, they bottomed each other out, but Energamine is come out, obviously, the better horse. Since then, Shishkin hasn't been the same. He obviously had his bone condition. And I was reading as well after the race, some of the notes. And if you look at the start of the race, Shishkin was getting checked on by the vets. And he said that he got kicked into. I don't know if that had anything to do with what's going on. He was obviously deemed fit to race. But like AP said, he was off the bridle earlier than most horses in that race. And he just didn't have the same like charisma as the horse he used to be, did he? So, but yeah, Edwardstone, brilliant, doesn't get enough credit. And in the Champion Chase market, he's gone from 10-1 into 3-1. So second favourite now behind Energamine. But like you say, how good he is compared to Energamine, we'll have to wait and see, won't we?
Yeah, exactly. Like I say, for when we see those two match up. But again, both of the lads are giving notable credit to Edwardstone for what he was able to do. Now, near enough an hour earlier, though, we had a race over the same course and distance, of course, in the Henry VIII Novices Chase, won by Jonbon in a whole league of his own. So, James, I'm going to go back to you, please, for your turn to take this race up first. Would you agree with that, and your observations, please, of the Novices?
Well, obviously, a bit sad to only see 4 runners go to post, but when you've got a horse like Jonbon, you're going to try and avoid it at all costs, because he is an absolute superstar, isn't he? He's an absolute superstar. Like, when you watch him over hurdles, he was only beat by Constitution Hill. Obviously, what a monster Constitution Hill is. But he was a brilliant hurdler. But they always said, I think AP will know more than me, but Henderson was always saying that to go over fences would be a much improved horse. And the twice we've seen him now, he's been electric, hasn't he? Absolutely brilliant. Like, Monmorale's no slouch in his opening run over fences. And then Booth Hill sets a good standard, probably not grade 1 standard, but a good handicap in his own right, rated in 140. So, and he put him just like to the sword. The jumping was excellent. And he's 6-4 now for the Arkle, isn't he? And I think it's going to take something really, really special. So, and I think it's probably going to be an Irish horse, like an El Fabiolo or Appreciated maybe, but it's got to be seriously special to beat Jonbon, because I think he's Arkle to lose at the moment. I know it's early to say that, but the two performances have been absolutely brilliant, haven't they?
Yeah, like you say, 6-4 then for the Arkle. You can't really, even from an Irish perspective, I'm not entirely sure what's going to come out and beat him. Now, of course, AP, you know this horse better than most. Can you tell us just a little bit more sort of about that? Was that, of course, being a 2-11 shot, it has to have been expected as such, but were you even impressed by what a display he put up at Sandown?
Was I impressed? I was no more impressed than I thought I was going to be. I would have been very disappointed if he wasn't able to do what he did. You know, a lot of people say, oh, when they're hurdlers and they go chasing, they'll be a better chaser than that. The only thing I would say about Jonbon, I watched him jump hurdles in Aintree when he won there, and I just he's a very bright horse. He's very quick with his feet, and I did always think that he'd be a better chaser, and he has shown that. What he has as a novice chaser is the asset if you're trying to follow a horse like Jonbon, who is in front of you all the time, who stays pretty well, and he's making ground at every fence, even when he's a little tight. He kind of bends his knees, and if you watch him, his head kind of stays the same height. So he's quite straight back, which a lot of people would think that is not a good thing for a novice chaser. But he's so fast from A to B, And when you're following a horse that's like that, you can't afford to make a mistake behind him because you're thinking he's gonna be gone on me all the time. So you're always under pressure to chase him. The jumping is a huge asset. I wouldn't be surprised in time if he's a better horse going to trip. But it'll take a good horse to beat him in the Arkle, because I think what you saw on Saturday was a pretty good performance. I think if you were to say to Aidan Coleman that this horse has to win and this is the last race of his life, he'd have went much faster. I don't think Boot Hill would have got within a fence of him, because I think what really impressed me was from the back of the last, or just before the last, he gave him a couple of little flicks, and the acceleration that he showed from the last to the winning post in Sandown, he was only getting going. So when he gets taken on by a horse going faster, I think it'll be an even greater asset as Jonbon. So Phil Dore was impressive winning in Navan. He beat San Roy, who's a pretty smart horse. We haven't seen Dysart, Daniel Mose, or Gerard appreciate it, all those horse willies. I'll be surprised if one of them is a better jumper than Jonbon.
Oh, I love that. That is the click that, just clip that one line out there, and we'll be happy to roll with that for the rest of the season, I think, to be honest with you. But I love what you said about, from a physical point of view, of a straight back on him, and the fact he does keep his head so level. He doesn't look as though he's going to nod or knuckle on landing, hence why he's so fast away from his fences. So from a physical perspective, that is a really fascinating insight, though, and obviously from the person who is going to know him as best as anyone else. It wasn't just Sandown, though, because at Aintree they hosted some brilliant contests as well, and the Many Clouds Chase was a fascinating race won by Noble Yates, who may go for the King George just yet. We're not entirely sure. We'll have to wait and see. But AP, your take on the Many Clouds, please.
Well, it just shows you what hope you'd have of trying to beat him in a Grand National. He was a properly well handicapped horse who probably, you'd have to say, the Grand National it was a unbelievably impressive performance winning Grand National, but to come and win in company like this was a huge step up. And the way he accelerated, going down to the last and after the last, you'd have to say that not many horses you think win Grand Nationals and you think, oh, could he come back and run well in the Cheltenham Gold Cup? But he looks like he may be that type of horse. Whether he has the pace to win a King George, he's going to be running against sort of similar opposition, if you like. There's no doubt that Hitman and Brave Man's Game, and then I'd be every bit as happy going out, I think, on Noble Yates as I would be in any of those, because I know that the one thing he's going to do in a King George is he's going to stay. I think he's got enough. We'll have him one round the entry. I think he's got enough pace to be able to hold his position. It wouldn't surprise me if he went. I mean, it's soon enough coming for King George, but I think long term, you could really see him running a big race in the Cheltenham Gold Cup.
Yeah, and people would have probably have laughed at you before the weekend, then, if you'd said about him being a Gold Cup horse. But like you say, so all he does is stay. He has that turn of foot now, he showed, and he would just continue to jump, wouldn't he, as well? So it's not many people or many horses, James, that managed to use the Grand National as a springboard to better things, but Noble Yates might well be able to have done that.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, really? Because when he won the Grand National, he was 7 years of age still. It's got to be improvement to come, but I've never seen from a horse, from all the time I've watched racing, to go over that like 4 mile 2 and come back to 3 mile 2 and whatever, but have the turn of pace to basically, from when it was going to the last, the pace a horse Senior is not a slow horse over that distance at all, and it made it look like a slouch. And for a Grand National horse that's going to have stamina in abundance, it's got pace as well. I think what AP was saying was bang on with the Gold Cup. I think he was 66 to 1 on Thursday before the race. On the Saturday just before, he went into 33s. He's now 10 to 1 for the Gold Cup. That could still have a bit of juice in it, a bit of value, because we don't know with Emmett Mullins where he's going to go, do we? Because he's quite a shrewd trainer, and he's not going to let anything go until the declarations. But for me, I think Noble Yates, with Aflutard coming out and not running its race in the Becher Chase, you got obviously to see Galloping de Champs, haven't you, in that Gold Cup. But for me, as a 10 to 1 shot, I think there's worse players in there. So I think he's got an absolutely great shot for the Gold Cup. And I was just so impressed with his turn of pace going over the last and finishing the race. And like I said, 7 years of age, this horse got much more to come, hasn't it?
Yeah, so much more to come. It's actually quite scary how much more he looks as though he has to come still there. Now, we are just a bit short of time, so we're just going to quickly touch on the Becher handicap chase. So obviously over the national fences, we thought that brilliant celebration from Harry Skelton and Ashtower Lad. Eagling, I guess I'm going to dub it as, across the finish line. So, AP, why did you never celebrate like that crossing a line? And what do you make of the race?
I'd have been much too worried about falling off, Kate.
Yeah, with one hand in the neck strap, he may have done it.
Yeah, Don't Push It won the Grand National. I think I celebrated pretty much at the line. I don't think it was definitely before the line. So, what did I make of the Becher Chase? You know, Ashtown Lad was a pretty well fancied horse for it. In fairness to the Skeltons, they have shown the last 2 or 3 weekends how good a target trainer and jockey they are. The horse ran, I think he finished 5th in the Scottish Grand National, so you could see why they aimed him at the Becher Chase. He jumped pretty well. He got a very confident ride. There was obviously plenty to like about it. The fact that he ran well in the Scottish National, he stayed pretty well. So it was a pretty impressive all-round performance to get a horse to win a race like the Becher Chase and to target him. And I say the 3rd weekend that they've targeted a big race and they've been successful. So I think you have to give full marks to the Skeltons and being able to hit those targets.
Yeah, definitely so. Would you chance him in the National now that he's probably going to be put up enough to get into the race? But Samina, would you question that, or would you chance him now that he's proven himself?
As I said, look, it's the Grand National, and he's jumped. He's jumped pretty well around the fences. You could say, oh, he could run in the top of the John Hughes, but do you really think the owners are going to get no disrespect to a race like that? But is he a year older than when he ran in the Scottish National, and will they think that he's a better chance of staying? Will he change his training? Who knows what? But I'd be surprised if he got into the Grand National. I'd be very surprised if they didn't run him, having jumped as well as he did and having won as nice as he did. So, look, obviously, I'd imagine, who knows? We're only guessing. It's the Grand, always worth a go.
Exactly, it's always worth a go. Who knows nowadays? And a bit of extra speed does you no harm in the National whatsoever nowadays, as Noble Yates has proven to us as well. Now, Fairyhouse, of course, had a brilliant 2-day meeting. We had 3 Grade 1s on the card yesterday, on Sunday, that is, with plenty of shocks as well. So, James, the floor is yours to give us your review, wherever you want to go with the Fairyhouse action.
Yeah, it was brilliant, wasn't it? It was great to see 3 Grade 1s on the bounce. The Royal Bond, I'll start off there. Marine National for Barry Connell. I thought Marine National got the jockey out a little bit of a trouble. Look, I think he's worth much more than that win personally. So I think he's absolutely brilliant. And because he's trained by Barry Connell, not your Willie Mullins or your Gordon Elliott, he weren't going off at 11-2 for that race. I think if that was a Mullins horse, that would have been favourite. So to get a price like that, and I just think if you go and watch it back, he had much more in the locker, and I think you'll see that later down the line. For the Supreme, I think it's got into 8-1 now from 16s. If you look Irish Point as well, run an absolutely cracking race. That's 14-1 for the Supreme as well. So I thought it was a really good renewal. If you look when they're coming around the corner, Champ Kylie, Marine National, Astro Diamond, Irish Point, they're all brilliant horses. They're all there together in the line, cruising. It was just who had the best class in the race, and obviously it turned out to be Marine National in that one.
Yeah, he was so impressive, wasn't he? I'm absolutely kicking myself I didn't nap him at that price of 11-2. I was put off by the market, but like you say, he is now an 8-1 shot with us here at William Hill then for the Supreme. And Irish Point himself doing no harm whatsoever in second, now a 12-1 shot. AP, any of the Fairyhouse action that really caught your eye?
Oh, I'm with James on Marine National. Really impressed with him. Look, Michael Stubbs on a young lad, but he was very dependent on him. Following them as confidently as he did down to the last. I definitely wouldn't have been brave enough. He'd have been very disappointed if he hadn't have won, and he'd have been the most unlucky loser. So I think we're only guessing whether he's going to be a Supreme horse or a Ballymore horse or whatever. But one thing that he is a pretty good horse. Look, Fashal Vega was unbelievably impressive in his first start. He'd be all the rage for the Supreme. But this horse, wherever he runs, as James said, he's not trained by Willie Mullins or one of the more fashionable trainers. He's trained by his owner. So, but I wouldn't put anyone off, any of the races at Cheltenham that he turns up, and he's a very good horse and definitely get the jockey out of trouble. I was really impressed with Mighty Potter. I thought he'd won a pretty a Drimmo that looked like a plenty of depth. I'm not sure that Banbridge really loved the ground. I think he'll be a better horse when the ground gets quick again. It must have been jumping ahead too far forward, but Teahupoo, who beat Honeysuckle, has only ever won on really heavy ground, so it was obviously testing. So I think the ground would have went against Banbridge a little bit in the Drimmore, but really impressed Mighty Potter. Made a few little errors. Again, is he more likely to be a horse for the 2.5 mile novice or I'd imagine that'll be his target. I don't think he'd be. I don't think he'd be a good enough jumper or be able to take on Jonbon. I think he'd be going the 2.5 with him. But he was impressive. He jumped well on the whole, a few little pecks, but 2 good horses. And if we jump ahead, then the Honeysuckle, it was so disappointing for everyone. I think everyone in racing wanted the Honeysuckle to win. are we making excuses for? Was the ground more heavy than it was last year? You know, maybe she's a little older. Maybe she's going to take her run a little bit more. Is she better? You know, maybe did she really stay it out yesterday in the heavier ground? Is she better at 2 miles? Well, look, we're jumping ahead. It'll be nice to see her again at Christmas. We didn't see the best honeysuckle yesterday, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement about that. I really hope so. It's not deliberate that I'm wearing the same colours as her today, I swear to God. But yeah, of course, that did break the hearts of Britain and Irish racing fans alike, though. But I'm in total agreement with you, AP, that I just think that now she's a bit older, with the ground, the fact that Tia Hoopu, with his best performances, has come on heavy ground, you'd have to think it was pretty testing. And she's never at her best in the Hatton's Grace, for all that she continued to win it 3 times on the bounce. But this time was a very different look of a race, I felt, where she really came up against those stayers with Classical Dream. I know that she had Ronald Punt previously beaten in the race, but it was a very different test, I thought, for her this time around. So don't be retiring horses anyway on the back of a very fair effort. Yes, she was beaten, but hey-ho. So it probably goes without saying for the pair of you that a horse to look forward to then from an antepost perspective for the festival. Would you both be siding with Marine Nationale then, James? Is that the way you're playing it?
Marine Nationale, yes, but I'm a huge fan of Facile Vega, so I've left it alone. But the one that really caught my eye was from Fairyhouse, and it was Lossymouth in the Grade 3 Juvenile Hurdle. Look, 10 to 1 into 4 to 1 is quite short when we haven't really seen many of the horses that are going to come out for the Triumph. I do know that, but Sir AP the Brave, obviously stablemate, set the standard from its earlier race. And for Paul Townend to pick Sir AP the Brave, you'd think that why that went off the price he did. Lossymouth drifted to 3 to 1, but what a performance. And a bit like Vauban last season, you saw Vauban lose to Pied Piper first time out, then go in the spring juvenile hurdle at the Dublin Racing Festival, then on to Cheltenham Festival. Everything was just progression. I can just see exactly the same with Lossymouth. And for me, even though 4 to 1's a bit skinny, I still think she's the most likely winner of that race at this point. So yeah, Lossymouth, very impressive for me.
Yeah, I'm in total agree. I thought that was going to be a horse. I really hope we touched on her. The turn of foot she showed the same turn of foot at Auteuil when she won there, now unbeaten. Bit bizarre, really, why Paul Townend, considering she was at the head of the Triumph market, like I say, she has been cut in now, but why there he went for Sir AP the Brave. But yeah, big talking horse beforehand. She's managed to justify that. AP, are you going Marine Nationale, or are you also looking for another horse for the festival?
No, look, it's very early, Kate. You look at Jet Power was really impressive winning Newbury for Henderson, but I think the way that Facile Vega dismissed of a lot of horses in the bumper last year proved that he could jump at the weekend. It's going to take a pretty smart horse to beat him. It'll be interesting to see where Willie Mullins goes in. Will he train him as a Supreme horse? Will he train him as a Ballymore horse? The likes of Faheen and lots of those good horses that were good stayers ended up, that were good and ended up come back to win champion hurdles, actually ran in the Ballymore. So you just don't, you're second guess Willie Mullins if you think that he's going to run him in the Supreme. That's who knows what Willie Mullins is going to do. But he's a very very good horse. I was impressed with Barry Collins' horse. I just thought he really got the young lad out of trouble, and to win, and if anything, if he'd went another 50 yards, he'd have been going away. So. But we've a lot to look. There's a lot to come yet, and we'll see. But I'll be surprised if I read the other day. We're not saying it's anything much, but Tony Mullins said Facile Vega was the best horse he'd seen. So look, he's a very very good horse. I'll be surprised if there's many better than him in novice hurdles this year.
Yeah, like you say, and probably, I think that Marine Nationale is a very talented horse, but he may just have come up against yet another superstar from the Mullins camp, Facile Vega,
It's just the fact, Kate, that he's proven, he proved what a good bumper horse he was. There was, it looks like there was plenty of depth in that bumper that he won. And he just proved at the weekend that he seems to be a pretty good jumper. So.
And it just continues to get better, that bumper form, doesn't it? Of course, even the Gary Moore horse and that one of the weekend authorised, what's his face?
Authorised Speed, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, has managed to boost it then himself. So it just continues to strengthen. And James, was he even? This lends us on nicely, by the way, without putting a flag in the itinerary for this podcast. So it leads us on nicely to the fact that we are focusing in on the Supreme as our anti-post race of choice for episode 1. So, James, how do you weigh up these two now? And from an anti-post perspective, from a betting play, is it something you'd be interested in getting involved in right now?
Look, it's tough, isn't it? I think 2 to 1 into 5 to 4 now, Facile Vega. And Facile Vega, for me, is the most likely winner. Obviously, the odds suggest that for the Supreme. And you just knew that he was going to be short from, obviously, like AP said, the best bumper form shown last season. All we needed to see was, would he jump a hurdle? He obviously did. He did it well. And everything just seems to be at half speed, doesn't it? We haven't really seen him, apart from when he raced at Punchestown after quite a long season. He had to get out a second, third gear, and he had to have a go. And he came back and won. So, yeah, for me, Facile Vega, he's the most likely winner of the Supreme. But we know Willie Mullins like to change it up throughout the season. So he could go to the Ballymore. We don't know. But like we mentioned before, Marine Nationale into 8-1 as well for that race. He's a lovely horse. We touched on him and others. I just want to mention Jet Powered, and RIP mentioned him. He was very impressive, wasn't he? In the really impressive. He's a general 6-1 chance. And like you touched on, authorised speed, 5th in the bumper. He's won twice over hurdles now. He probably doesn't jump as well as some of these, and probably he's not the class sexy option. But at 33-1, you'd like to think runs his race in that. I think one for authorised speed, he needs the ground a bit softer, doesn't he? And I wouldn't be surprised if he went back to Sandown, raced in the Tolworth. You normally get soft, heavy ground around that time. Yeah. And I think he could be a really good bet in that race. But one that did catch my eye at quite a big price, and we haven't really seen much of the horse. It's Gaelic Warrior for Willie Mullins. Around 25-1 with William Hill when I was looking through for doing this. And it was a massive high horse, that wasn't it, in the Boodles. He just jumped things slightly to his left. But having another year's training under Willie Mullins, hopefully been seen a few more times than he did last season. For me, Gaelic Warrior at 25-1 might be a little bit of value. I'm just really interested to see him because that run in the Boodles was brilliant, even when it had its mistakes. So, yeah. Facile Vega, most likely winner, but at a price, Gaelic Warrior is the one I want to watch out for.
Yeah, definitely. So, like you said, I mean, he's 25-1, isn't he, Gaelic Warrior with William Hill at the current time of recording. And we just talked about authorised speed, also at 25-1 for the Supreme as well. But yeah, Gaelic Warrior, what a way to retain your novice status for this season, wasn't it? Yeah, just go and deliberately finish second in a Fred Winter then, just to retain your status for the next season. But yeah, definitely a fascinating horse who had an awful lot of growing up to do. I was fortunate enough to meet him at the festival then. Big numb horse, and yeah, he still was very babyish in lots of senses. So definitely a lot of growing up to do from his perspective as well. So that is just a look ahead then to the Supreme from the antepost perspective. But Facile Vega, of course, I mean, it goes without saying he's going to be very difficult to beat even at this early stage. Just looks an absolute monster, barely out of first gear there on Saturday at Fairyhouse. So instead, we're going to now look forward to something a little bit closer to home then. Looking forward to this weekend's racing, where we have Cheltenham returning this weekend with the international meeting. There's also graded action at Doncaster to look forward to as well as plenty of Irish racing. So AP, starting with Cheltenham with you, please, that we have on Friday and Saturday. Are there any races that catch your eye in particular?
Well, obviously the international hurdle is going to be of interest. You know, we're not, you know, whether they're up to being champion hurdler, you know, dangerous to Constitution Hill or not. But you've got the likes of I Like to Move It. Epatante was in again, so she is. Nappers Hill first straight was pretty impressive, winning the Cherry Field and at Newbury. I don't think any of them are going to have Constitution Hill shaking in his stable, to be honest. But I Like to Move It. It's been a well placed horse. Won the Greatwood. Obviously Nappers Hill's an improver. You know, look, Epatante sets a pretty good standard, even though she got put in her place by Constitution Hill. You know, she'll be hard enough to beat if she turns up in the international hurdle, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
And the big handicap chase. The big handicap chase looks kind of, you know, looking down through it, looks pretty open. Again, the Skeltons have another horse, Midnight River, who obviously finished third at the November meeting. I think he'll be much better on this track, on the new track. I think he looked like he was a little slow away in November, and I think that this track will suit him much better. So I can see why he's going to be very well fancied. And they said they've won the big races the last 3 weekends. The horse that looks second favourite at the moment of Paul Nichols is El Redoto. I wasn't sure if he was an out and out stayer, so I'm not sure this track will suit him better than the last track will. So I'd be inclined to look at the you know, I wouldn't be surprised if the Skeltons were to win another big weekend. The other one that I thought ran pretty well in the Holden Gold Cup was Warlord. He'll be better off. He'll be better going a bit further as well. But yeah, I did watch that race in November, and I thought that Skelton's horse would be much better in the new track. So, so two pretty obvious ones, but I think Epatante.
You're getting 10 to 1 about Warlord, not so obvious. And he's already been nibbled in there, was 14s. He's already been nibbled into 10 to 1. So the each way play there for Warlord. But Midnight River, therefore, in the Gold Cup handicap chase, another one of these 2.5 mile handicap chases that we get at all of the Cheltenham meetings throughout the year. But AP makes a really good point there, James, that we are switching course now from the old course that we've had at the last 2 meetings at Cheltenham to the new course, more of a stamina test and which horses that's exactly going to suit. And he's made a really good case there for Midnight River that these variables will suit him more. Is this a race you've also been focusing in on?
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with AP on this. I think Midnight River, look, he's at the top of the market, 72, but for me, most likely winner. The way it ran in that race, you'd like to think they're going that little bit further. And like you said, the Skeltons, the last 3 weekends, what is it? Lamilos in the Coral Gold Cup, Protectorate in the Becher Chase, and then obviously at the weekend as well with Ashdown Lad. You would not be surprised if they had another winner on the Saturday because they're absolutely going great guns, aren't they? And I think Midnight River is a cracking show. What's really interesting to me looking in that market is Horton Clause for Willie Mullins. If that does turn up and does go, at 10 to 1. He was a bit of a talking horse over the last few seasons. Probably hasn't produced what everyone thought he would in the grade ones, but off a mark of 152, dropping back, yes, he will be top weight, but if these are really graded horses, and he's a Willie Mullins horse, and Mullins doesn't send money over for this meeting, does he really? I just thought it was really interesting in the market, Horton Clause. And like talking about the international as well, obviously if Epatante goes, she'll be very, very tough to beat. But Epatante and First Street both only 14 days in between that race. So are we completely sure that they're going to go? But as you say, Epatante most likely winner. But I do like Napa's Hill. I think Napa's Hill has been so progressive this season. And not many people would think he beat So Royale. So Royale's racing it, the elite hurdle. And he did that fairly easily. Just think he's improving. He might not be as good a horse as Epatante, but I'm really interested in Napa's Hill. I'm looking forward to watching. I think he's around 3 to 1 at the moment, so might just be the value in that race. And just the last race I wanted to touch on was the John Durkin on Sunday. Obviously, Galloping the Champs, 4 to 7. I'm just looking forward to seeing that race. But you've got horses in there like Chacun Pour Soi, Blue Lord, Fakir Duderies, potentially Fernie Hollow and Conflated. It's a cracking race. All the Irish big guns taking on each other. So, yeah, that is definitely a race to watch out for at the weekend.
Yeah, like I say, the Grade 1 action then on Sunday at Punchestown. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. AP, have you got any sort of Irish angles or any interest from the Irish perspective for the racing then at the weekend? Of course, we have that big race at Punchestown. JP has enough going for that race as well. Do you have any sort of look ahead to those Irish contests at all?
Yeah, look, I presume Fakir Duderies might run in that race. He's a pretty good, solid horse. He was, we won Grade 1s last year, Ascot and that. So he is a pretty smart horse, but everyone thinks that Galloping the Champ is the second coming. Whether you'd like to think that if he is, over this trip, he looks like he's got plenty of pace. I mean, I suppose a lot of people thought that he was going to rock up in a King George, and that was the obvious target. And he obviously, Willie had a mentor, and he took him out afterwards. I'd imagine he'll win the John Durkin. He's got Chacun Pour Soi, Blue Lord, Fernie Hollow, lots of his stable mates is danger, but he's the obvious one. Looking ahead to the Cheltenham Gold Cup, I know that he's a horse that is, 1 over 3 miles of hurdle, whatever, but stamina in the Cheltenham Gold Cup is everything, and he has yet to prove that he has the stamina to go 3 miles too, and on the new course at Cheltenham is a fair task for any horse. So there'll be a lot of guessing on Tingle, and he's a very good horse. Look, and the amount of horse that Willie Mullins have, the amount of champions, and he's the one they all talk about. So it'll be nice to watch him, and that's what we want in our sport. We want champions, and we want to see the best horses. And he, at the moment, if he's the best in Willie Mullins is, then he's a pretty good horse, isn't he?
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm not saying he is the best in Willie Mullins, by the way, because they got Fashal Vig and all that, but I'd say he's pretty high up in the list of very good horses there.
Yeah, the fact that they keep mentioning him, they've cited him as their Gold Cup hope, basically. I mean, yeah, of all the ammunition that they have, that's pretty much putting the crown on his head, really, isn't it, for that? But yeah, so I mean, no doubt, if he goes and wins and bosses the John Durkin at the weekend, he'll probably shorten up even more so, therefore, for the Gold Cup. But as AP said, do just bear in mind that he hasn't fully proven his stamina yet. So whether or not you're watching out for that at Punchestown at the weekend might just be something still to bear in mind. So well done, lads. We have crammed in an awful lot into episode 1 of this first show of the Inside Track. So we better wrap it up there, really. But thank you so much to the pair of you, to AP and to James, for all of their hard work this week. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We will be back next week. This has been the Inside Track, brought to you by William Hill. So we'll look forward to speaking to you next time.